All right, here we go. My opponent starts with e4 and I'm going to play. c6, my favorite defense, the Caro-Kann. Careful, the opponent is highly rated, 2291, and he plays the pawn to d4. So I'm going to play d5. The pawn to c6, and for this, he chooses the advanced variation. The bishop comes out to f5 before closing the position with the push of the pawn to 6. Here, of course, I exchange and he recaptures with the pawn on d3. That I didn't know. Usually white recapture with the queen. But here he recaptures with the pawn d. I think it doesn't really change much regarding the need to play the pawn to 6. But for what follows, it might be quite different because he has two pawns d to try to contain my central reactions. Usually black respond with c5. Here he can exchange and then play d4 afterwards. Well, I don't know, maybe we'll end up with the same thing. I play c5. So the idea is, of course, to put pressure. The pawn on d4, if he had let me take it, but he pushes, he attacks my bishop and he plays very quickly. If I play fb4, check, he will play fd2. I can exchange, of course. Here, I'm hesitating between fb4 check and fb6 to keep the pressure on the pawn on d4. fb4 check, if I play kdc3, am I really going to go and take it? His knight. Because if I take his knight, pawn takes, he will get the nice square. A 3 for his bishop, and that might bother me. I'm going to play bishop b6. I'm keeping pressure on the pawn on d4, and I want to organize the development of my pieces around the pressure on the pawn on d4. Knight c6, then knight e7, and knight f5. You see, triple the attacks on the pawn on d4. But he can also triple up in defense. He plays the knight to c3, so knight e7. He always plays very, very quickly. Maybe he'll want to play knight f4. But if he takes my bishop, the queen can take and still keep the pressure on d4. It's a backward pawn, a hidden one, meaning I don't have an open file to attack it with the rooks. But the other pieces can still go after it. He plays knight b5, he's aiming for the d6 square. And so here, if I play knight f5 to control d6, the problem is that I'll get hit with g4. So I could kingside castling to avoid the check, but he'll still get into d6, and that's troublesome. I'm wondering if I shouldn't play knight c8 before pushing his knight back with the move a6. It's pretty passive, but maybe that's what needs to be done. But if I play knight c8, he'll play bishop g5. That move is troublesome. Well, I still have queen d7. That's true, it still holds with queen d7. And then I chase his knight. I can even chase his bishop. I'm going to play knight c8. It seems very passive, but I want to defend d6. I don't want him to get onto that square. And I play bishop. g5 as expected. I can also consider pushing to f6, but I think queen d7. Since I haven't castled, I keep the position closed. And then I think about pushing his knight back with a 6, pushing his bishop back with h6, and redeploying my knight to e7, maybe to f5. Later, kingside castling, the rook on the c-file, on the open file, and finally the vessel will be well placed. He plays knight c3, he doesn't even wait to get hit with a 6. Here, I am going to questioning his bishop all the same. I'm going to play h6. He goes back to e3. And now I'm going to reposition myself to e7. Maybe I'll need to slip in a little move like a 6. On knight a4, I would have bishop a7, for example. He plays a 3. What is he going to try to do? I don't know. If I play a 6, I weaken the defense of my bishop and maybe queen b3 after that to attack my bishop. My bishop will retreat, maybe the pawn to b7. No, for now I'll do a kingside castling. I'm not going to make a decision. A 6, ce n'est pas si urgent à jouer. And sometimes you push a pawn and end up regretting it, because a pawn that advances is a pawn that can never go back, and so you lose control of certain squares. So as long as I don't have to push this pawn, I won't do it. He plays the rook to c1. I'll also play the rook to c8. Maybe he'll play a little move like queen d2 to connect the rooks and start looking at a possible sacrifice on h6. On what? I'll definitely play king h7 to protect my pawn. And now, knight a4. He attacks my bishop, and that's when I end up regretting not having played that move to a 6. But here, what is really threatening? Knight takes, pawn takes. It damages my structure a bit, that's true. Knight c5, I could take. That doesn't scare me. Maybe knight f5 here. But after knight takes, pawn takes, he'll play queen b3 to attack my pawn. So I'm looking at queen d8. If he takes, I can recapture with my queen. But queen d8, he'll play against me. Queen b3. He'll want to take my bishop anyway. Here, that's the problem. If I move my bishop back, knight c5 is very annoying. So maybe I still should have played c6. Because knight f5, knight takes, pawn takes, queen b3. How do I deal with the pawn on b6 after that? Maybe with the b5 push, on queen takes b5, knight takes a5. I attack his queen. If he takes my knight, recaptures. Yes, maybe like that. Let's play it, king f5. So after knight takes, pawn takes, queen b3, I play b5. And on queen takes b5, knight takes e5. And if he doesn't take my pawn b5, maybe I can push b4 at some point. I really like this idea with b5, actually. Queen b3, b5. Then I could also have knight f5 attacking his queen, and my knight comes into c4. That could be interesting. He plays rook c3. He's going to want to play rook, maybe bishop 3, or else triple up on the c-file with queen c2 and rook c1. Here I'm looking at knight f5. That takes away the b3 square from him. My knight can settle on c4, and there's a possibility to exchange the rooks. I'm going to play knight f5. That also frees up my queen. It gives my queen some squares, you never know. So here, my threat is rook takes rook, because if pawn takes, I break his structure, the backward pawn on c3, the isolated pawn on a 3, the weak square. c4, the c-file, a file to attack his backward pawn on c3. He can't just leave it like that. And he does leave it like that. He plays bishop c1, incredible. He thinks that recapturing with the pawn will help consolidate d4, but I still think it's not good. I'm going to take. And now how am I going to attack c3, maybe with the rook on c8 right away? I'm putting pressure on c3. If he starts defending with bishop b2, knight c4, the weak square, the attack on the bad bishop, because a bishop on a black square at b2 is a very bad bishop. It's basically a big pawn in the end. It will be the same color as all those pawns that are blocked and obstructing its activity. So now I'm getting back into the game. That's really the right way to put it. So I'm attacking the pawn on c3, the weak square c4. The queen that can get closer, though not on a4, of course, since he has his queen, but it can come and position itself on the file, c, sometimes even come to b5. My knight, on the other hand, isn't doing anything. But it can reposition itself. It will have to come back to a 7. Well, for now, I'll leave it there. Maybe at some point he'll chase it away. Maybe he'll play g4. And he plays g4. He plays g4 with the intention perhaps of playing g5 afterwards. So here, it's not as if I really have a choice. I have to go to e7. So we're not going to overthink this, and now maybe he'll play h6. h6 could be countered. h5, securing the square f5, reinforced with g6. So I'm putting all my pawns on white squares, even though he has the bishop of dark square, which normally isn't the right approach. But since he'll have the pawn on g5 and the pawn on e5, his bishop won't be able to get out. That's it. That's the idea, actually. He plays bd2. So now nc4. I like putting this pressure on the bishop, and of course I'm attacking the pawn on a3. Now, even if I win the pawn on a3, in reality I'd have one more pawn, but since I have doubled pawns, it doesn't really matter. and he plays g5. So here I counter push with h5. I want to play g6 and nf5. Maybe he'll play g6 himself, but knight takes. I'm going to win a pawn, even though I know the pawn on h5 is a bit vulnerable. I don't want to recapture with the f-pawn on g6. On the other hand, if he pushes g6, and he pushes g6, so knight takes. And here he's going to play king to g5, queen takes h5, and he'll try to get in on h7. But the presence of my knight will hold the h8 square, so if I move, there won't be any mate. And there you go, he plays knight to g5. So he's attacking my pawn on h5, but let's not forget that his bishop is also under attack. So I'm going to take his bishop first. If the queen takes on h5, there's no mate. So he has been diverted from attacking my pawn on h5. And now what am I going to do? The center is closed. I absolutely have to manage to put some pressure in his camp anyway. What does it give? f6? It's dangerous, of course, to mobilize the pawns from your castling, but you have to calculate. Pawn takes, the knight is chased away. Where is it going to go? The problem after that is if I play a move like king f7 to let the rook through, then he also has access to the square on h6. Or else I would have to come to h7, but I'm not very confident. Otherwise, I have to attack the pawn on c3 right away. Queen to c6, he'll play rook to c1. And after that, I don't see what I do. And if I played knight to h4 to get the square on f5, knight h4 also threatens knight f3 with a fork as well. Well, he has the knight g5 who holds, but the knight g5, I can destabilize it by pushing to f6. Knight h4, if he plays queen e2 to attack my pawn. All right, I'm going to play. Queen to e7 here, I put pressure on his knight. I'm watching the pawn on a3, even though my goal isn't really to go take the pawn on a3 over there, and maybe my idea will be to play next. Knight h4 with the threat of taking his knight on g5. If he recaptures with the queen, then knight f3, a royal fork. It takes a few moves, but we'll see what he plays. If he plays f4, knight h4, I hold the square f5. He plays rook b1, he's attacking b6. But I don't really think that's important. I'm going to play knight h4 as planned. My knight, I need to improve its position anyway. On g6, that's not good. It doesn't put any pressure in the opponent's corner. Here, it will put on some pressure. I'm threatening queen takes knight. Queen takes and knight f3 with the fork. So he can't go and grab the pawn on b6. After the pawn, b6 is easy for me to defend. I can play rook c6. But first, let's see how he will solve the problem, because if I play a move like queen f4, it doesn't solve anything at all. Queen takes, I have 5 checks with the same idea. He moves his king. So he saw my idea. Maybe even, he might want to put a rook on the g file at some point. If I play queen takes a3, I'm still attacking his pawn on c3. He comes to f4 and will attack f7. But I can bring my knight back to f5. There could be some rook's takes, but we shouldn't forget that his king is also exposed. All right, let's play it like this. Queen takes a 3. So I'm attacking the pawn on c3. I know he wants to take on b6 and b7 to attack f7 as well, but I'm attacking c3. I'm looking at the first rank because his king is still vulnerable. So he plays queen to f4. That was expected. He's attacking f7 and my knight. So now knight to f5. The pawn on c3 is still under attack. So he takes on b6, and I look at the checks. What does that give? He's forced to come to g2. Are there any interesting checks after that? I don't see any. So I'm going to take on c3. But if I recapture with the rook, he'll play rook takes b7, and he'll threaten mate. On b8 because the knight controls the h7 square. I need to be sure I have a mating attack. Rook, check, king there. But actually, I don't have a follow-up. So I'll probably take with the queen. He'll take on b7 to attack f7. But here there's d4 and the king is weak. Let's see. So that's what's happening, actually. Queen to e1. Is there a check that can come here? And I still don't see anything. Queen to h3, that's not possible. There's his knight. Queen to d3, I'm threatening. Queen to f1 mate. Afterwards, he can move his king. I don't see it. I don't have much time left. So I'll offer... No, I'll play. Queen to d3 anyway. I'm going to threaten mate. Otherwise, I'll go back to f8 with my rook, and I'll come take the d4 pawn. Because here I haven't found how to checkmate him, how to continue the attack. So I protect f7, and the d4 pawn is still under attack. Maybe he can play rook to b4 to come defend. That's what he's going to do, I think. I have one more pawn than he does, but I can't get close to his king. My pieces are well placed, except for my rook, of course, but my knight and my queen are very well placed. Maybe the pawn can play a role. He's coming to defend. I put my queen here. I don't even know why I played that. It's simply so I don't lose on time. Now, if his queen isn't watching e3, sometimes there could be checks since the pawn is pinned. He's bringing his knight back. I'm going to attack here. There might be things to do, but the problem is I don't have any time left, so it's hard to calculate everything. I'm attacking his rook. I'm simply putting pressure in his camp. Here, if I take his knight, if he takes the queen, there's the fork, but well, he could take with the king. So let's bring back the rook or not, I don't know. I don't have much time. I'm going to attack his rook. Well, now it's really, I'm not doing anything, but it's just so I don't lose on time. And here maybe queen here, because on queen takes pawn, takes the 100 cows notebook. I grab the d4 pawn and I'll have two more pawns. So he has a way of getting that pawn back, of course, but he wants more pawns for the endgame. He'll keep the queens, but then my queen is well placed. So he takes, I take back, his case is the ends, I win d4, but he's going to come here to attack my pawn. But maybe that's what's going to happen. No, he's coming there to attack the pawn. If I go there, he's going to come and put his pawn. I'm going to take space with my rook, try to get my rook into play. He's going to move his king, prepare checks with the h-pin to win the h5 pawn. No, he comes there, he attacks. I put my knight back there on f5. I'm a pawn up. Well, after that, I've exchanged the queens, so there are no more major threats to my king now. I just need to handle this endgame. So I'll start by attacking. His pawn, provoke the move to f4, and then play rook a4 to attack on the fourth rank. He comes to defend. I don't have any interesting fork. I got a little check here that's interesting, maybe. He's forced to go to e3. I've got a little knight on g2. Check. I don't know what that leads to, but it gains a little bit of time. If he comes to f3, knight to e1, we find the fork. So he can't go to f3, he'll come to attack my knight. I could take his, he'll take mine. And then I'll take his pawn on f4, and I'll have 2 extra pawns in this endgame. That's interesting. What you have to do to win a chess game, it's tough. So, king f3, knight e1, the fork, so he'll play king f2, but I can take his knight. He takes mine, I take the pawn on f4. I think I'm going to play it like this. I could also have taken on f4 with my knight, actually. But now I have 2 extra pawns. 1 extra pawn in a rook endgame isn't enough, but 2 extra pawns is very interesting. I play g5 to stabilize my rook and allow my king to get through, to encircle the e5 pawn and make it fall. Moreover, the pawn on g5 and the rook control the h4 square, so he can't destabilize me. Maybe I could have played h4 to make him retreat, actually. We'll see if I play it later. Now he's going to try to go around me. If he comes to a7 to attack, I can take. The rook will defend. Let's make his king retreat and attack his pawn. And with 1 more pawn, we go up to 2, then to 3. But now he's attacking my pawn on f7. So I come to defend, and he's going to come back to defend as well. All right. I'm going to play rook to e3 to attack his pawn on h3 and pin down his king a bit. I'll give a little check that really pins down his king. And now king f5. I'm going to come and attack his pawn, as always. Here, I'm going to give him a check to force his king back to the first rank. And then I calculate, if I play king to f4 and he takes on f7, after the check, I play king to g3. And I would threaten mate. No, because he can bring back his rook. He can also play king to f1. But I think it's still good. I play king f4. I'm going to have a very dominant position. And on top of that, I'll be attacking the pawn on h3. So rook gives this check, king g3. His pawn is under attack, and rook to e1 is not pleasant. And the pawn on h3 is also under attack. So that's the advantage of having extra pawns. Endgames are like cooking. You have to know how to count the little peas. He plays king f1. So I take the pawn on d5, even though I would have liked to keep the advantage on the rank 2 for it to be cut off. But here, I'm going to take the pawn on d5. I'm threatening. Rook f5, the exchange of rooks. And of course, capturing on h3. And so after capturing on h3, I have 3 pawns up. And he doesn't give up. He keeps playing. Be careful that he doesn't manage to pull off what's called a crazy rook. That is, he's going to try to put his king in a stalemate position where it can't move anymore. And at some point, he'll start sacrificing the rook. That's the idea behind the crazy rook, to create a stalemate position. All right, I'll give him a little check here, then maybe advance my pawn. I'll play king g3, that way I face his king, which could create mating threats at some point. And on top of that, I open the way for the pawn on h1. So he took the pawn on 6. I didn't even notice I was losing the pawn, foolishly. And I push my pawn, careful not to end up in a stalemate position. I know he's going to look for that, and I don't have much time left. I have to stay cautious until the very end. He checks me, so I block with my rook. If he takes, it's easy to win now, so he shouldn't take. He moves away. I'm going to move away as well. I'm going to take control of the second rank or not. At this point, I don't even know how I'm supposed to win, honestly. Well, I'll take control of the second rank. I don't have much time. You Play rook to g2, check. He moves to h1 and tries to sacrifice his rook. Taking it leads to stalemate. So what am I going to do? Well, here I'm giving little checks, which are completely useless, but it's just to gain some time. If he leaves the fourth rank, I could push my pawn with check. I give check. And now I'm going to bring out the king. He gives me check, I'll go here. He'll give me check, I'll block with my rook. Here, I put my rook as a shield so it allows my king to get out and protects me from the lateral checks he's going to give me. So now I push my pawn and I'm threatening mate now. Against lateral checks, I bring my king closer. Then I'll use my rook as a shield. Ah, I have mate now. He trapped his king.